Hi, I'm Tara from Marathon Mates. This week we have a very special privilege of speaking to an absolute legend of Australian athletics, Robert de Castella. Rob is going to talk about the Indigenous Marathon Foundation and the wonderful work that they are doing to help Indigenous Australians achieve massive changes in their lives and ultimately their communities. Are you ready to run? Let's go.
Deke running by himself. The only thing on his mind now, can I get that world record?
I loved running marathons. They test you. They test your limits of endurance, of pain, of being able to control your mind and body.
Took a little water right there, said down the home stretch. He's got the police escort.
The feeling of being able to run 42 kilometres is so empowering. You feel that you can do or you can achieve anything after that.
A very sweet victory indeed, because it means that the Australian is undoubtedly the world's #1 marathon runner.
I had a very good running career and a very good career working in health with kids. I've been a very lucky and I'm a very proud Australian. I guess what I'm not
thrilling world
proud
of the flying runner, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Welcome back to The Flying Runner. I'm Tara, and today I am joined by Tim and Tony, my marathon mates. We have a very special episode lined up where we are honoured to have Australia's greatest marathon runner, Robert de Castella, join us to talk about the Indigenous Marathon Foundation. But before we get to Rob, how are you guys? And how has your week been?
Well, my week was pretty good. We did a park run on Saturday, or the curly park run, as we say. It was a park run distance. I had a colonoscopy on Friday, so we took it a little bit easy on the Saturday, and then backed that up with a 17K there on Saturday. So Sharon's in a bit of pain. She's hurt her back at the moment. So
that's not good.
this week probably won't look fantastic for her, but still feeling good, still moving on. And yourselves?
Yeah, we're pretty good. We've started to ramp it up a little bit in the midweek training and also on the longer runs on Sundays. So a few extra. I think we did one extra session during the midweek this week. So taking it from what were we doing? 2 sessions now to 3 sessions a week on the Monday to Friday, and then park run. Where'd we go? New Farm. Oh, it was an absolutely stunning morning at New Farm Park Run on Saturday. Really blue skies, clear views along the Brisbane River. What was it? Probably 19 degrees temperature. It was just a beautiful, perfect winter's day.
It was a wonderful day. So
and then backed it up on Sunday with a 25K long run for us. And guess who we met along our way?
Tell me.
Our marathon mate, Terry Frew. We saw him there again, so had a little stop and a chat with Terry, and he's going well. He's got Sydney Marathon in a couple of weeks, he was telling us, and he's starting to really ramp up that mileage, so he's starting to get in towards that 80 to 100 kilometres a week training that he was talking about a couple of weeks ago. We're pretty good, I think.
The King of New Zealand, we should call him.
Yes, so he's
absolutely.
He's brought a few New Zealand listeners and viewers to our podcast, so we've got to be grateful for that.
Absolutely, we love them.
Excellent. So we've got 2 weeks to Sunny Coast. Is that
right?
Sunny
Coast is 2 weeks away for us, so we're just doing the half marathon there. We're just going to cruise, as we've said, I think, along in the previous episodes. Our son's going to run it as with another friend of ours, so we'll run with her as well and help them get their PBs. And that's the thing we really enjoy doing, is seeing others have fun and enjoy themselves. So 2 more weeks. So we're sort of on a taper. We had a chocolate thick shake on on Saturday after our long run, on Sunday after our long run, just to celebrate the start of our taper as we usually do.
Yeah,
and the machines were working at
yes.
the Mac that we go to. So yeah, we'll carry on normal this week with our training.
Yeah.
But, we'll probably give the long run a bit of a miss, I think, or a lighter version of it on Sunday, just a week out before Sunny Coast.
Yeah, speaking of chocolate thick shakes, our Macca's thick shake machine was working as well. So we enjoyed one on Sunday as well.
We all better knock on wood and enjoy it while we've got it.
This sounds like an ideal opportunity for Macca's to get on board and sponsor our thick shake cravings that we have.
I'm sure we're not the only runners that have cravings for thick shakes.
No.
So on other news, I guess we've over the last week or so, they've announced the elite field for the Chicago Marathon. So the big news from that is Kelvin Kipton.
Yep.
The winner of the London Marathon earlier this year, and also the second fastest man of all time, just 14 seconds off Kipchoge's world record. He's going to be at Chicago. So Tim, our marathon mate, world number 6, I think he is at the moment, isn't he? Bashar Abdi will be there as well. Now, we met Bashar in Tokyo for our first Tokyo Marathon. Very nice guy. Had some breakfast with him. Very humble, but he's going to be there as well. And on the women's side of the draw, there will be an exciting field that has been assembled with the world number 2, who is Ruth Kepchirchai. Sorry, bear with me. Heading that field. So, what are you thinking about what's happening there with the Chicago field?
So, I'm thinking it's going to be a very quick field on both the men's and women's draw, and it'll be interesting, Tony, because you'll be at both Berlin, where the number 1 Kipchoge will be, and in Chicago, where the number 2 Kelvin Kipton will be. So it's going to be interesting from your perspective, seeing or being involved in both of them. It could be 2 world records in a couple of weeks if they smash it.
I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about that, to be honest. So Kipchoge and then Kipton. And what I'm really liking about Chicago is I'm so intrigued to see how Safan Hassan, the winner from the London Marathon, goes up against Ruth. I'll just call her Ruth because because I just get the feeling with Hassan that she's a racer, and no matter what the pace is, because what we saw in London was incredible from her, and everyone was saying she's out of the race, she was too far behind, she catches them, and then at the end she just sprinted and was surprised almost that no one went with her. So I just think she's a racer, and I would be putting my money, if I was a betting person, I'd be putting my money on her to be the winner.
She's got the form, hasn't she? She's unbeaten over the marathon distance.
Yeah.
She's only done it once in London. But that was an interesting race, as you say. She actually stopped at about the 12K mark of that race and stretched out her legs because she had some cramps or whatever. And even the commentators were saying she's too far behind, she's gone. And then she just picked them off. As you said, she's a racer. She focused on the race. She focused on the people in front of her and just picked them off one by one and had a bit of luck go her way, and she passed them all.
And just naive as a marathon runner, and just that last drink stop before they come into the mall or towards the finish line, and she's lunged across the road because she almost missed the drink at the last drink station, and then she gets a drink, and then she's offering it to the girl she's running beside. It's just magical to see just someone so naive and just trying to help her fellow runners. So I'm so looking forward to seeing her run in Chicago.
She's going to be good. So you've got 2 really good elite fields there. I think we've always got a soft spot, as Tara said, for Bashir Abdi. He's our man. And that's the great thing. When you do Tokyo Marathon and you do it with Traveling Fit, you stay in the same hotel as the elites. So when you go downstairs to the breakfast area where you have breakfast, there are the elites having breakfast with you in the main restaurant. So for the 3 or 4 days beforehand, you see them all just gorging down, waffles and bacon and sausages and bread like nothing else, like 3-4 plates per person, and they're only 40 or 50 kilograms each. These runners, they're not that big, and you see them doing the full sort of carbo load, and then after the race, which is when we saw Bashir, we saw him the day after the marathon. He's just sitting by himself at the table next to us, and we're chatting to him, and turns out he got second. He got the silver in Tokyo Marathon.
Yeah.
And we're having a chat to him about, what it's like to be an elite and, the differences between elite and what we do.
Yeah.
Really nice guy, as Tara said, and he really opened up and talked to us without having to do it. But at the same time, he backed it up last year in the Olympics, not last year, the year before, the Japan Olympics, Tokyo Olympics. He was the guy who got bronze at that Olympics. So we got a soft spot for him. He's number 6 in the world. He's actually competes for Belgium, but he's I think he's Ethiopian.
Okay.
Kenyan. No, he's not Kenyan. He's Ethiopian, I think.
Yeah, I think Ethiopian.
By descent. But really nice guy. So, we're Bashir fans. So go Bashir. But at the end of the day, we want to see fast times. We want to see world records if we can. Obviously, we're soft spots for Kipchoge, but I think Kelvin Kiptum is the next heir apparent at the moment. The way he ran London was just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really interesting if ever they come up against each other, because Kipchoge's, not getting any younger, and then Kipton is very much the young challenger. So it will be a shame if they never race each other, but almost it will be good if they don't race each other, because you'll still have that age-old argument, I guess. And
who's better?
Who would win? It's like so many boxing matches of different eras, sort of thing. So
Tim and I were actually talking about this on our long run on Sunday, and we're like, oh, it is a shame that they're not racing each other, because it would have been great for Kipchoge to have that push as well. Like, he really responds well to having that extra pacer beside him, and he could have used them as a really good pacer, and vice versa. So
Kipchoge uses his paces, and they tend to drop off at about 25, 30 Ks, which means he's left running by himself for the last 10 to 12 Ks of the marathon events. Having somebody racing him over those last 10 Ks would give him a different result, I think.
Yeah, it would be very interesting. So
but both fields. The other one in there to watch is Benson Kipruto. He's 10th best in the world as well on the men's side, and Jocelyn Jepkosgei is also in the top 10 as well on the female side. So there's a really good field there, and I think from your point of view, Tony, you won't be disappointed. I think when you get to Chicago after Berlin at the quality of the field that you're racing against.
Yeah, I am so looking forward to it. So excellent.
I guess the other news that we've got at the moment is Sydney Marathon surpassed 14,000 entrants now. So we talked about last week they're at 13,000. This week they're at 14,000 entrants. Remember, 15,000 is the number of finishes that they need to have in consecutive years in order to sort of step up to that world marathon major status. But I like to think that 1,000 extra people that signed up were because of the promotion last week or two. So if you are listening, do sign up. There are, I think tonight's the last night, isn't it?
For early bed,
because the recording will go to air. So unfortunately, we're recording this a bit earlier in the week than when we release it. But the early bird entrance costs have finished as of today. But that doesn't mean you still can't sign up. You just pay a little bit more, but definitely do it. The other news of the week was that we've just had the Australian Outback Marathon. From the pictures I've seen, from the reports I've seen, from people we know, it all went off without a hitch. Hence why I'm wearing my Australian Outback Marathon shirt. But we don't want to give too much away tonight or today. We've got Michael Walton from Travelling Fit and also the Australian Outback Marathon coming on next week to talk about the event, to talk about what it is, because it is an event. It's not just a race. It's actually a whole event. And, you don't want to miss next week's episode. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. And seeing some of those photos on social media, I was missing not being there. So
Team Ellis has had serious FOMO this week.
There's something about that red sand that draws you in, and
Yeah.
it's just this. Even when you pick it up and you put the red sand through your fingers, you just feel part of the country when you're out there. It is.
Yeah,
it
it
is.
is. It's quite hard to describe because, you know, every Australian knows Uluru, or some people may still call it Ayers Rock, but, you know, so many people obviously knows Uluru. But it's not until you get there that you actually appreciate the sheer magnitude of the thing and the spirituality around the place. So it is an absolutely amazing event, and it's one that, you know, we were privileged to go 2 years in a row, and yeah, we just loved it. And every year now, no doubt when we see it, we just go, I wish I was there. Maybe not running the Red Dirt Marathon, but we'd just love to be there. Now, on other news, and this is, to me, I think it's a fantastic news story, and it's I've got a mate who works in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, and he sent me through the link for the live stream of the Port Moresby International Marathon, which was run on Sunday. And this is the first marathon held in Papua New Guinea since 1988. So Congratulations to the organisers. It was Port Moresby Runners Club. The course was a 10.32 kilometre loop, and to do the marathon, they had to do that 4 times. So not the most exciting of courses, no doubt, but they got it out there. They got it done. The marathon itself started at 4 a.m. in the morning, and that's obviously because of the heat and the humidity that would have been present, and the half started at 6. And so just to acknowledge, they had overall 141 participants, of which 47 finished the marathon, 30 finished the half marathon. So not great numbers, not huge numbers, but first time in 40 years. Everyone's got to start somewhere. And out of that 141, there were 42 competitors from 14 countries.
Wow.
So the international, was quite big, so which was good. The winner of the marathon male was a gentleman called Alexander Swepson, I believe his name was, from Switzerland, and he did that in a time of 3 hours 22. The winner of the female marathon was a Hong Kong athlete called Von Dupart, I believe her name was, 4 hours 22. One of the local winners was a gentleman called Peter Barkey, who won the half marathon in a time of 1 hour 26. And the winner of the half female was also a local, I believe, Mariana Raff, 2 hours 1 minute. So
I could have been the female winner for the half marathon.
I'm looking at those times. I've been to Port Moresby 2 or 3 times before for work, and it's not a flat city, so I don't know where they would have run it. They would have possibly run it along the waterfront, but there are some elevated sections there. So some of those times might be reflective not only of heat and humidity, but also a fair amount of hill climbing.
Yeah, I just think it's fantastic that they're able to get it back up, and let's hope they do it next year. And for any runner that truly wants to test themselves, this might be your opportunity to win an international marathon. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, if anything, you can always say you're top 50 of an international field. So that's a rare thing in a marathon. So
So well done to the Port Moresby runners.
Yeah, good work, guys.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that update, guys. Now, I'm going to hand it over to you, Tony, if that's all right, and we're going to talk about our very special guest, Robert de Castella.
Yeah, and a huge shout out to Aisha from the Indigenous. Sorry, I've got international on the mind. Indigenous Marathon Project, and for the introduction. Now, all 3 of us on this panel had previously met Rob. But one of many thousands of people that Rob must meet during the course of any event that he's at. I remember Rob mostly from the 2018 New York Marathon that we ran, and he did the pre-race speech the night before. and there's always a couple of things that I'll remember, which I'll share after the interview. But 4-time Olympian, 3-time in the top 10 in the Olympics. He was the first ever world marathon champion. He set the world record in 1981 at Fukuoka, Japan. 2 times Commonwealth Games gold medal. He won the Boston Marathon in a course record, and which also was an Australian marathon record at the time. He was on the podium twice at Chicago and New York. And just to sort of round it all off, he was top 10 3 times in the World Cross Country Championships. But after retiring, he became director at the Australian Institute of Sport, and he's now heading up the Indigenous Marathon Foundation. Now, the IMP and the IMF are linked. The IMF is the Indigenous Marathon Foundation, and the IMP is the Indigenous Marathon Project. So they're 2 separate entities, and that was something that was confirmed to me during the conversation we had with Rob. The IMP is the public face in many ways. This is the real benefit. Now, once again, I first became aware of this in 2018 when I met one of the 2013 graduates, graduate 28 in Colin Sampton, who was doing an experience stint with Travelling Fit. So he was part of the Travelling Fit crew for the team that travelled to New York Marathon that year. 2018 was the year of first for Sharon and I in many ways. We first met Colin. We first heard about the Indigenous. It was our first marathon and the first time we witnessed the pre-race rev up from Rob. And that was incredible. It really helped us set the tone for our run the next day through the 5 boroughs. And he had a very simple message, and it was just keep putting one foot in front of the other and you'll ultimately finish. And that message was actually amplified when Colin shared his story and his journey during the marathon. So it was a really incredible experience, and one that set us up very well to finish the New York Marathon the next day. Now, the IMP is an absolutely inspirational program. Rob's going to share a lot of stats and figures as he walks through the interview, but it's making real differences for individuals, families, and communities in living healthier lives. In fact, they did a social review of the program by an independent auditor in 2016, and that highlighted that for every $1 invested in the program, delivered approximately $6.60 of social and economic value. And that, wow. To me, I think, you know, when you hear returns like that, that's just wow.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, Rob, as I said, Rob shares a lot of stats during the conversation. But before we lead into it, I'm going to lead into the conversation. I want to just acknowledge those original 4 runners of the program back in 2010. Charlie Ma, who's now a 6-star medalist, Joseph Davies, Juan Darwin, and Caleb Hart, because they were the pioneers and they were the ones that had no idea truly what they were getting into and ultimately the change that they were going to create. So I'm going to turn on a video, which is a trailer for the original documentary Running to America, and then please sit back and listen to our conversation or watch our conversation that we had with the man himself, Robert de Castella.
Robert de Castella has embarked on a scheme to develop a culture of marathon running among Aboriginal Australians. He's just completed a recruitment drive across the country, seeking out 6 young Indigenous athletes he'll train to run this year's New York Marathon.
I'm going to try and do something positive because there's a lot of negative things here in Alice.
You'll inspire a lot of kids. You know, you'll inspire a lot of adults to be better. You're making history. Times are irrelevant. These guys, didn't even know what a marathon was.
Duane said, big rock in my head. but that big rock was what each of them had in their head.
At times, like, I wanted to quit the marathon project because it's just too tough, it was just overwhelming.
I really want you to stay with us, mate. Maybe we won't do it, maybe we won't get anybody to the start line.
Certainly a memory I'll keep for the rest of my life, especially coming from like a small town like Kununurra.
You get around the next corner and there's something amazing.
We just say a little prayer that we're going to get there together.
Okay, thank you for introducing Rob, Tony. Now I'm very privileged and very honoured to have Rob de Castella joining us, a true great of Australian running, and I'd say one of the all-time greats of Australian athletics. So thank you for joining us, Rob.
My pleasure. Nice to catch up.
Yeah, thank you. So tonight we want to talk about the Indigenous Marathon Foundation and project. I know they're two separate entities. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences between the IMF and the IMP, and in particularly what we're interested in, I guess, is the IMP?
Sure. Yeah. Look, the foundation, the IMF, the Indigenous Marathon Foundation, it's been going for about I think maybe 11 years now. But the Indigenous Marathon Project has been going. This is our 14th year. So it really all started with the IMP, and started with a pretty crazy concept of seeing whether you could get a group of young Aboriginal men initially back in 2010, and train them for a pretty short period of time. I think back then it was about 7 or 8 months, and take them from not even knowing a marathon existed and never having done any fun runs or anything else, and take them from virtually no running to running the New York City Marathon. And it was, initially it was really about a talent ID concept, sort of trying to see whether the Aboriginal physiology was similar in some ways to the African runners, and seeing whether we could maybe, with the right programs, build up a group of top distance runners, especially, marathon runners, to take on the African dominance. But for me, it changed very quickly. In that first year, I grew up in Melbourne and did all of my running from Melbourne or from here in Canberra, and had come across very few Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders. And really, other than just being aware of some of the, the closing the gap statistics that everyone hears about, hadn't really seen a lot of the struggle until that first year, until 2010. And 2010, traveling, you had two guys from Alice Springs, Caleb Hart and Charlie Marr, and one fella from a little remote community up in Arnhem Land, Joanne Darwin, a little community called Maningrida, and another young fella from Kununurra, just over the border, the NT-WA border in the Kimberleys, a little town called Kununurra. And those first four fellas were a massive exposure to me personally of some of the confronting challenges that Aboriginal and a lot of young Aboriginal and some Torres Strait Islanders live with on a daily basis. And then, to take them on that journey and get them eventually over all of the hurdles and challenges and setbacks and issues that they had, and get them to New York. And the concept wasn't mine. It was, the idea of a fellow called Matt Long who wanted to do a documentary. And he approached me with the idea and said, do you think Aboriginal men can run like the Africans? And especially given the success in a lot of the football codes and other sporting codes, it was a pretty interesting challenge. So that was the original concept. We really struggled to get much traction. A lot of people really gave me and the project a hard time. We struggled to get funding. And eventually, we managed to get a little bit of funding to get those four guys over to New York. And the documentary, the Running to America documentary, was produced and released the following year. And I think it really captured the imagination of a lot of people who work in this space. It really captured the imagination of a lot of the running community, and to see to be exposed to some of the issues, but to do it from a position of overcoming the issues and still achieving the goal that they set themselves was a really uplifting and a inspirational message. And then from that we managed to get a little bit more funding from the government, and then we included women, and it had a much bigger squad in 2011. I was able to employ a full-time coach and a couple of other staff, and the foundation was started a couple of years after that. Originally, it was run out of another charity that I'd been running for a few years called Smart Start for Kids, which was really trying to address a lot of the child obesity and child inactivity issues that are also epidemic across the community. And then once the foundation once the IMP program started to get traction, and we started a community running program back then called Deadly Running Australia, had Deadly Fun Runs, and I employed one of our graduates, one of our first female runners, Nadine Hunt from up in Cairns, was our first Indigenous employee, and then the foundation started soon after that.
Right. Yep.
I saw that first documentary, Rob, and it was actually really quite inspirational, and really did highlight some of the challenges, but also the challenges that you had, I suppose, in selecting who was going to be part of the IMP. And as the project has evolved, what is the current process of how do people put their hand up to be part of the IMP, and how do you select them?
Yeah, look, it's changed enormously. I mean, back then we struggled to find those four guys. If it wasn't for a free trip to New York City, we probably wouldn't have had anyone. We certainly wouldn't have, because they didn't know what a marathon was, and they had absolutely no interest in running the New York City Marathon. But it's we talk about dropping a rock in a pond and sending these ripples of inspiration across the waters, and that's what those first four fellows did. And now this year we had 172 applicants we have 12 positions, 6 men and 6 women, and they represent that squad of 12 is an incredible representation of First Nation Australian young men and women, 18 to 30-year-olds, men, women, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islanders, and from right across Australia, from little remote communities, from country and regional towns and centres, and from the major capital cities. So it really is an incredible representation of fully initiated, strong culture, community, men and women, all the way through to runners that have been disconnected through stolen generation and through a whole host of different circumstances. And for us to bring those 12 together, and they connect and they become family, they become brothers and sisters who support each other through their journey. And it's not just a journey of running. In a lot of ways, the running is just a metaphor for them to push forward, to take on challenges, to be healthy and to be active, but really to unleash some capacity that probably they don't even know exists within them. And that's why, I love the marathon concept. I love the fact that it's hard. Anyone who's done a marathon knows that going in underdone is a real mistake. Hitting the wall at 30K is really, for anyone, it's really exhausting and painful, and it's a struggle. And for our guys to do that off just 6 months of running, and the longest run they do is 1 maybe two 30K runs before they go to the starting line. And that's not really enough, you know. I mean, it's so far. You know, when I was running, I was doing a 30K run every week, every Wednesday, and then a 35K run every Sunday. And then, you know, still training twice a day, 7 days a week. So for them, and I was doing that for years before I ran a marathon. So for them to just, you know, think that they can get by or get through it on the running side of it is not right. Yeah. They get through on their strength and their character and their determination, and that's, you know, what I want them. That's what I want the event to show them, how strong they are. But also, I want it to be a little bit of a demonstration to the whole country, to non-Indigenous Australians, that these young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island men and women can achieve something pretty remarkable, and it dispels a lot of the negative stereotype. It dispels a lot of the deficit conversation that is so dominant in the media, and a lot of non-Indigenous Australians. That's all they really hear about. So it's really important that we do things like this to provide a platform to demonstrate that amazing capacity and drive and achievements of First Nations Australians.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, I mean, we were all at the London Marathon, and we were lucky enough to be there with Charlie when he did his 6 star. So it was amazing. We were chatting with him. He was handing around the medal. We were just so impressed by him, his determination, his mental strength. How many actual graduates have you had overall? Obviously, we know Charlie, but how many overall have you had?
So Charlie's number one, and he's very special, and you know, he's also our first graduate to run all 6 majors, which is pretty incredible to do. You know, as a community fella from Alice Springs, a Western Arundel man. And now we've got 132 graduates all up, who have all run. Most of them have run major international marathons. Through the COVID years, we had a couple that haven't had an opportunity to get overseas yet, but we took a group of those guys to Athens earlier or late last year after the New York Marathon, and we had a group of the 2020 and 2021 grads who did their first international in Athens, and we're also taking a group to Honolulu in December.
Wow.
So our commitment, so our commitment to them was that you know, we will you stick to the path, you keep on training, keep on doing the right thing, and we'll get you to an international marathon. They both ran their IMP marathon in Alice Springs, or in the outskirts of Alice Springs. And it was pretty special as well, doing it, you know, in their backyard and having family and other people, other friends there to support them. But I want them to see the size of running on the global scale. So really keen to get them overseas to run. And it's, you know, we say the finish line in Central Park is just your starting line. So it is really important for us as a foundation that we continue to support and mentor and provide grants and scholarships and assistance to all of our graduates to continue to step up. And you know, the 172 applicants that we had this year, to select 12 is pretty challenging. But the things we're looking for is, you know, what is their why? You know, what is their purpose, and how strong is that? So when they do hit the wall, whether that in the marathon or whether it's just, you know, the alarm goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning and you've got to get up and go out for a run. That's a pretty tough wall to get through as well.
Especially when you're training by yourself.
Especially in Canberra. So that they have to have that strong why, and for a lot of them, you know, it is that they want to break the cycle of you know, trauma and struggle and disadvantage, and they don't want their children or their nephews or nieces to have to go through what they've been through or what they've seen. So they want to be these, you know, agents of change. And then secondly, so that's absolutely critical. They've got to have that strong why, because when you do hit the wall, you say, why am I doing this? And you've got to have that answer ready. And the other thing is, from the foundation's perspective, we have to see in them that they have the capacity to drive change. It's not just about taking, an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Island man or woman to run an international marathon. It's about using that as a springboard and as a stepping stone, and what do we think their future and their capacity to really step up as inspirational leaders and agents of change, and then how can we, as a foundation, through our fundraising and donations and through the t-shirts and other little bits and pieces, our sponsors and things, how can we support them on that journey, bearing in mind that they're still young men and women, they're 18 to 30-year-olds. So they're just starting out on their journey as adults, and it's really important, I think, for us to support them, side by side. We say we run side by side. Nothing worse than having someone when you're out running who's a meter in front, or someone who's too far behind. You feel guilty, but having someone just by your side as you both push each other forward is a good metaphor for us that we use.
So, Rob, you talk about you've had 12 members or 12 participants at any one time in any one year. I guess they're scattered this year all around Australia in various communities. So firstly, can you give us an idea of some of those communities where those people are coming from this year, but also how do you train people that way?
Yeah. We're about to do a catch up with them pretty soon. So we've got quite a few guys from the remote communities. So we've got a young mum from Nooka in the Northern Territory that's about 5 hours sort of east of Katherine. So very, very small remote community, about 300 or so people. So she's from there. We've got another young man, Joe, from Borroloola, which is also in the Northern Territory, another remote community. We've got another fella, Peter, from Beswick in the Northern Territory, another very, very small, isolated little remote communities. And we've deliberately gone a little bit heavier in some of the remote communities this year because we see sometimes having one significant person in a remote community can have a big difference. Having one person in Sydney, you're not going to always have the same impact, but having someone in the community can have a huge impact. And we've got also another fella, Jimmy Egan in Wyndham in Western Australia, just over the border there. So we've got 4 guys from those remote communities, and we've got we've got a mother of 2 from Darwin. We've got a single fella, Jack, from Melbourne. We've got another amazing young lady, Jade, up in Townsville. We've got a fella over in Perth. We've got one of our girls, or one of the women I first met when she was about 11, and she's from a little remote community called Gallawinku up on Elcho Island. And we had another one of our graduates from Elcho Island, from Gallawinku. When I was up there, we were doing a fun run with Evelina up there, and this young girl won the fun run. So she was about 11 or 12 when she won that fun run when I first met her. And then she relocated from Gallawinku to Darwin and studied, and was mentored by another one of our graduates who was looking after a group of Aboriginal kids in the school there. And now she's relocated here to Canberra, and she's studying at the ANU. So her name is Faith, and she's a pretty special person. So it's pretty diverse and spread out right across the country. Pretty much from South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria, Northern Territory, WA. Queensland, so it's a pretty diverse group.
Wow.
Yeah, I can
Yeah, sorry, Tony. Yep.
I can just imagine the impact that the program has on communities right around Australia, and I certainly are one of many that sit back in awe and applaud the whole project and the benefits that you've had. Rob, I know you're hard up against a deadline, and we've only got a couple of minutes left on that. So just one final question, I guess, and how can people support the IMP or the IMF? What's the process?
Yeah, look, thanks, Tony. I mean, it's really important. I mean, we are a charity, not-for-profit charity, so we very much rely on all of our donors and support. And people can support us by buying a T-shirt. Just going online to our website and wearing the T-shirt. Being seen to be supporting the foundation in fun runs and events out there. We've got a great relationship with a lot of the race directors around Australia. So we, like at Gold Coast, and we're just up at the Cairns Running Festival, often have a significant presence. So, if any of the running community are out there, please don't be shy. Come over and say hi. If you see any of our runners in their gear out there, sort of pop over and say good day. So, really want to encourage that connection. And then, we have events, so all through November, we have an IMF virtual run. So it's a way that the running community can join our squad in New York virtually. So, people can log on, and this is all on the website. People can sign up. They can sort of log their kilometres, set themselves a goal to run a distance through the month of November, and just follow all the stories. I feel really privileged to have had this opportunity over the last sort of nearly 15 years to meet some amazing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people, to see this incredible, beautiful, rich culture that we have in our backyard. Everyone says it's the oldest living continuous culture on the planet, and I see it as such an important part of the identity of who Australia is.
Yes.
And it's something that separates us from every other country on the planet. Sure, we've got struggles, and there's a lot of work that we need to do. But what I'm seeing through the simple act of running is that we are not only promoting health. We all know that physical activity and running is really important for our physical health, but it's also important for our mental health and our well-being. Yeah. And it's also such a wonderful and beautiful way to bring people together.
Yes.
So, we've got grassroots running programs. We have what we call IMF Raw running and walking clubs. So we've got about just over 40 clubs all around Australia where our graduates go back. So they come through the program, not just in terms of getting fit enough to run a marathon, but they also, education is a really important part of it as well. So they come out of it as qualified level 1 recreational running coaches. They come out of it with a first aid and CPR certificate, Aboriginal mental health first aid certificate, and also doing a certificate in Indigenous leadership. So the education is the other side of the IMP program, alongside with the running, and so important for us to provide them with the ongoing support afterwards. If I feel as though if all we ever did was take them to New York, and they came back with a beautiful big New York City Marathon medal, but they didn't do anything afterwards, then I would have failed. So it's really important for us to have the support to provide them with the pathways and the opportunities after their marathon to continue to step up as inspirational leaders and change agents. So it's encourage people. There's lots of ways that people can join us, and we're always looking for supporters and help along the way. So please reach out to us and just follow the stories and connect with the guys through social media.
Yep. No, I agree. And look, I know you're pressed for time tonight, so thank you very much for your time, Rob.
Thanks, Tim.
We will put up some details on our website and on our pages, our social media pages, on those various links to the IMF and the IMP. But thank you very much, and I think we can all agree that what you're doing is truly life-changing and community-changing. And the stories that we hear of these runners that go and do this wonderful thing and then come through that and become leaders in their communities, it's just awesome. So
thanks very much. Look, I think, you know, I'm so proud of what I did as an athlete, and you know, representing the country at the Olympics and World Championships and all those things was wonderful. But in a lot of ways, this is the most important thing I've ever done. You know, I mean, this is addressing something that we as Australia need to improve. You know, this is a really critical issue that we can't just, you know, look away and ignore. You know, we have to find ways, and if just through the simple act of running we can make a difference, then, you know, this is the most important thing I've ever done.
I know it's brought a lot of awareness to a lot of runners that I know. So, and it's really opened up our eyes to a different culture as well. We've been out to the Outback Marathon on the premise that we've seen you guys at Main Beach Park Run, and we talked before, and it's fascinating. It really is, Rob. You really should be proud of not only just what you've achieved in your life, but what, as you said, what you're doing now. It's changing everyone else's life as well. So it's great.
Thanks, Tara. Thanks very much. Well, it's a marathon, so a long way to go. And we'll keep on plugging away.
Excellent. Halfway is the 30K mark. I remember that.
That's right. Yep, that's when it starts.
That's it. All right. Thank you very much,
Rob.
Rob.
Thank you so much, Rob.
All right. Thanks, Tony. See ya.
Wow, what an inspirational individual. How was that, guys?
That was awesome. Thanks, Rob, for joining us and for giving up your precious time to do that. What did you think, Tony? I thought it was pretty impressive listening to the story there.
I did, and just some of the things just mind-blowing. And you think back to Rob talking about those initial 4 and how hard it was to get them. And then to hear what he's now saying about the number of applications that are coming through. And the success of the program is incredible. 132 graduates have run a marathon and have become change makers in their community. And just that ripple effect that is happening with that is just, and you know, that's such a positive program for any community. And to see that happening and occurring in Indigenous communities, which can unfortunately be marginalized, and we know that. So to see those benefits coming through is just amazing.
You can actually hear in him how proud he is of that, and he's quite a humble man. I think when you talk to him about running and everything else, whether it's on our podcast or when we've had discussions with him before, he's quite humble about his past achievements. But with this one, it's one that I think is his legacy. It's his big thing that he's leaving behind that's going to change Indigenous people in this country and running, I think, in general. And you can hear how proud he is about that. I was really impressed. The whole aspect of this program is that we take an individual who's never done something like this, we build them up to give them the confidence to be able to do something as challenging as a marathon, to learn the skills to be able to handle the hard times, to work their way through those problems, to be able to then move forward, achieve something. But then they go back to their communities and inevitably they become leaders in their communities, encouraging others to get into running or to do other things that become hard in life.
Yeah.
And that is something that can't be underestimated, that effect, that ripple effect. I think that this program, 132 graduates, probably has impacted a couple of thousand people just from this program, if not more, with the benefits that it's come out of it.
Yeah,
so,
the social review report that was in 2016 featured a number of different quotes from families and communities, and it's just inspiring to see the impact that these people have had. And I'm sure that when Charlie, for example, joined the program back in 2010, he had no idea that it would create a bug that saw him complete the 6-star journey, and that was in London.
Correct.
Yes.
And
Yes,
then
saw that.
Yeah.
And then, Alira, that's it. She
Yeah.
completed her 6-star journey in Boston. So it's just incredible the spark that this particular program creates. And of course, if you're looking to donate, they do a virtual run during the year. They run deadly fun runs and they do all sorts of things. And obviously, if our listening or viewing public want to help them, just head on over to imf.org.au. So that's imf.org.au and support them any way you can. And if you are of an Indigenous person interested in trialing or applying for the program, applications for 2024 open in November or December this year. So keep your eye out for that. And have a crack. It's just incredible. I think there's a real opportunity here for a lot of the young Indigenous athletes who play football. There's a lot of star Indigenous athletes playing AFL and NRL, but there's also a lot that don't make it. And I think when you get, because the funnel's it starts so wide when you're a teenager, and then it just funnels down into the most elite, I guess, that make it in those at that premier level. But there's an opportunity for athletic minded people. They may miss out on their NRL or AFL dream. Put your hand up and join the Indigenous Marathon Project, because you can still make an impact, not just for yourself, but for your communities. And I think that's a really important message as well, Tim.
Yeah, it is. And it's also interesting that they're alone in their communities doing this training, but they're not alone because they're part of the project. So Rob alluded to it. He had another meeting to run to, figuratively, but he had another meeting, and that was largely a meeting where they get everyone together online on a weekly Zoom call or whatever it is to go through their training, how they're progressing. So they've got each other to lean on, and they grow through it together and experience the whole journey together. So whilst they are training alone and that motivation becomes hard, they do have coaches and the likes of Rob that they can rely on to give them that advice. So definitely get into that imf.org.au website. There is a tab up the top there that allows you to do some fundraising or to donate. There is also a tab on that page for shop. So if you are interested, you can buy singlets and t-shirts as a supporter, which profits from that then go through to the IMF as well. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's break down some of Rob's. I know he's a very, very humble man, and he doesn't bring himself like he's very humble about his achievements. But let's just have a quick look at some of his achievements, because I think most Australians around my age would be very much aware of the journey he had for the 82 Commonwealth Games here in Brisbane. But he first came to attention in 1981, where he won the Fukuoka Marathon in Japan in a time of 2:08:18, which was a world marathon record at that particular time. He then backed it up with a 2:09 to win 82 Brisbane Commonwealth Games, which at the time was an Australian all-comers record. Am I correct in saying that was only recently beaten, Tim?
Yeah, the Australian all-comers record was only recently beaten in the last year or so, I believe, by I think it was Brett Robinson, maybe.
Yeah. So he also then backed it up with a first place in the Edinburgh Commonwealth Games in 1986. The Olympics, he never medaled, but 10th at Moscow, 5th in LA. He was 8th in Seoul. And in his final Olympics in 92, he was 26th at Barcelona. And he retired in 1993. When you look at the world majors, 94, third place Chicago, 84, third place Chicago, 85, third place Chicago. He won the Boston Marathon in 2:07 in 86. Now, I wasn't even aware an Australian had won the Boston Marathon, and I know how tough that course is. And that was an Australian marathon record. In 86, he was second in New York. In 88, he was fourth in Tokyo. And in 1990, he was he backed up Boston and was fifth. So an amazing history of results.
If he was competing now with those sort of results, he would be Kipchoge-like. That there is no doubt about it. Being a world record holder, winning a major, placing in two of the other three, or placing in the other majors, coming fourth in Tokyo, 3 top 10 finishes at Olympics, 2 Commonwealth Games, you would have to say that is up there in that sort of elite level. And I said it at the beginning when I introduced Rob, that he is, the greatest Australian marathoner of all time, but I also think he is one of our greatest ever athletes. Put him up against the likes of some of our, Shirley Stricklands and some of those guys in the track and field over the years, and he's on par with them with what he's achieved.
Very much. And I know that you were really disappointed that our time with Rob was so compressed, because I know that you wanted to ask him, how do you think you would have gone against Kipchoge if you were running today?
Yeah, with equal shoes, equal training, supplements, clothing. You got to remember, the shoes weren't the same technology 40 years ago. The clothing was cotton, not wicking type material. You didn't have all the nutrition and all the rest of it that you have nowadays. So that's the one burning question. One day I'll get to ask Rob at some stage. But knowing how humble Rob is, he probably won't give me an answer other than, it would be, Kipchoge by a long way from him, maybe.
That goes back to our original conversation at the start of the podcast, where we're like, comparing people from different eras. It's very hard to do, but it would be great to see the difference, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
The other question I'll ask Rob another time, if I get a chance, is, he mentioned in that interview about his thoughts that Indigenous Australians might be able to show the same sort of marathon and running abilities as the East Africans. And I just wouldn't mind pushing that a little bit further. I think next time we have a discussion with him to understand where he thinks that's going, and whether or not in the future, with some, training and proper, coaching and all the rest of it, whether or not there might be a future Australian Indigenous runner out there that could be, a Kipchoge-like runner. Who knows? But again, got to thank Rob very much for his time. And going forward, also, we are looking to have other IMF and IMP representatives join us. So we'll look to get Aisha, who introduced us to Rob, to come on board and tell us her story. She sits on the board of IMF. But we're also looking to get some of the finishers as well, the guys that have gone through the IMP, to come in and talk about their journey as well. So this is not the end of our discussions about the Indigenous Marathon Project. We'll continue them on in future episodes.
Absolutely.
All righty. What's next, Tara?
Are you going to do a funny?
I do have to do a funny. These are getting harder every week.
So sorry.
You're probably going to offend a few members of our audience with this one, so I'm not sure if I do it or not, but I'm going to do it. So if running a marathon was easy, it'd be called cycling.
You're only offending the triathletes. It's okay.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Well, you got Tony.
I enjoyed that one. And one of the reasons why I enjoyed that one is because one of the podcasts I listened to, The Long Run, for the 40 Runs community in the UK, and they challenged Chris Ford, who's 40, to do a 100-kilometre bike run. And he lasted one day of training because he just was bored out of his skull, he reckons. And he suffers a little bit of anxiety, and being so close to other people just really didn't put him in the right mindset. So he stopped. So cycling.
Your butt hurts constantly for like 3 days afterwards.
And you don't have to pedal to go down hills.
That's true. Oh, well, Tony, So what's coming up on next week's episode?
Yeah, thanks, Tara. Next week we go from one legend of Australian running to another, and we get the privilege of having a chat to Michael Walton, who's the race director and owner of the Australian Outback Marathon. Michael's going to give us a recap of this year's event, not just the race itself or the races itself. I've got no doubt he'll share some stories about the events that we truly miss, the dinners and the post-marathon drinks. But really looking forward to that, and I think everyone will be truly entertained by Michael.
Yeah, no, he'll be looking. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a good chat.
Thanks, Tony. Look, I can't wait for that episode. Anyway, we have now concluded our 5th episode. So if you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe wherever you have listened or watched this episode. Video of this episode will be available at Spotify and YouTube, and audio will be on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and most other popular podcast platforms. Just remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Until then, happy running.
Happy running.
Happy
See you.
running.